Jack Miller stood alone on the observation deck of Lunar Base Alpha, staring at the vast blackness of space. His reflection in the glass showed a man with tired eyes and a stubborn jaw. 3 silver bars on his shoulder. Once, there had been 5. The demotion still stung after 6 months. "Pilot Miller," a voice called from behind him. "Your new assignment has arrived." Jack turned to face Captain Brooks, his current commanding officer. Brooks held out a data pad with barely hidden satisfaction. "Escort duty," Brooks said. "Ambassador Reed needs transport to the Galactic Summit. You leave at 0600 tomorrow." Jack took the pad without a word. Escort duty was what they gave to pilots they wanted to forget, far from any real action, babysitting diplomats who spent their time talking instead of doing. "The ambassador specifically asked for you," Brooks added, his smile fading slightly. "Seems your reputation has reached certain ears." Jack's reputation had spread across the Earth Defense Force after the Battle of Mars. He had saved 3 transport ships full of civilians by flying in ways that broke every rule in the combat manual. His superiors called it reckless. The civilians called it heroic. His commanding officers settled on demoted. "What ship am I getting?" Jack asked, scrolling through the assignment details. "The Persistence." Jack looked up sharply. "That's a Class 3 shuttle, not even a proper warship." Brooks shrugged. "Budget cuts, besides it's just escort duty through friendly space. The Alliance promised safe passage. The Alliance of Advanced Species had welcomed humans to the galactic community 5 years ago. Welcomed was the polite term in diplomatic circles. Tolerated was more accurate. To the older species who had been traveling between stars for thousands of years, humans were noisy children newly arrived at the adults' table. The next morning, Jack stood before the Persistence with growing doubt. The ship was small, with an outdated hull design and visible patch repairs. Ambassador Reed, a tall woman with silver hair and perfect posture, waited beside it. "Pilot Miller," she greeted him. "Your reputation precedes you." "So I keep hearing," Jack replied. "Ma'am, with respect, this ship isn't suitable for breaking rules." She raised an eyebrow. "I requested you specifically because you think differently. The Alliance considers humans primitive. I want them to remember we can be unpredictable, too." Jack studied her with new interest. "You're playing politics with my flying skills?" "I'm using every tool available," she corrected. "This summit will decide if humans get a real voice in galactic affairs or remain second-class citizens forever." 3 days into their journey through the neutral zone, Jack's unease grew. The ship's sensors were picking up strange energy readings that didn't match any known patterns. "Could be sensor ghosts," he told Reed as they studied the display. "This ship isn't exactly top of the line." "Or?" she prompted. "Or someone's using scramblers to hide their approach." Jack frowned at the screen. "But the Alliance promised safe passage, and pirates don't usually come this far into monitored space." The answer came 30 minutes later when 3 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly in their path. Their designs were angular and predatory, painted with red markings that identified them as free traders, the polite term for pirates in this sector. "Ambassador, secure yourself in the safety pod," Jack ordered, sliding into the pilot's seat. "Standard procedure is to surrender to pirates and wait for rescue." Reed was already strapping herself in. "And what will you do, Pilot Miller?" Jack's hands flew across the controls, bringing the ship's modest defenses online. "I never was good at standard procedure." The comm system crackled. "Human vessel, power down and prepare to be boarded. Resistance is not advised." Jack opened a channel. "This is a diplomatic vessel under Alliance protection. The ambassador to the summit is aboard." "Then the ambassador will make an excellent bargaining chip," the pirate captain replied. "Power down now or be destroyed." Jack cut the communication and turned to Reed. "They're too confident. Pirates would be more nervous about attacking a diplomatic ship." The first shots fired across their bow confirmed his suspicions. The patterns were too precise, the formation too disciplined. "Those aren't pirates," Jack muttered. "They're military, disguised as pirates." He pushed the Persistence into a tight spin as energy beams carved the space where they had been. The ship groaned, under forces it wasn't designed to handle. "Can we outrun them?" Reed asked, her voice steady despite the situation. "No," Jack replied, studying the enemy formation. "But they expect us to try. They expect standard evasion patterns." Jack smiled grimly. "So let's show them something non-standard." He cut all forward thrust and fired the maneuvering jets in a pattern that sent the small ship tumbling backward while still moving forward from momentum. The pirate ships overshot their position, confused by the illogical maneuver. "What are you doing?" Reed gasped as the artificial gravity struggled to compensate. "Using physics," Jack replied. "They're flying by the book. I threw the book away years ago." He fired the ship's single-point defense laser, not at the enemy ships, but at a specific angle into empty space. The beam reflected off the polished hull of the nearest attacker, splitting into 3 weaker beams that hit vital sensor nodes on all 3 enemy vessels. While their targeting systems reset, Jack executed a maneuver that human physicists had theorized, but no pilot had ever attempted. In combat, by alternating the ship's thruster patterns in a precise sequence, he created a ripple effect in the local spacetime that momentarily confused all standard targeting algorithms. In that brief window, he fired the Persistence's modest weapons directly into the exposed engine section of the lead ship. The explosion damaged the other 2 ships, leaving them drifting. "How?" Reed stared at him. "The Alliance said that kind of spatial manipulation was impossible at sub-light speeds." Jack checked the ship's systems. They had taken damage, but nothing critical. "Humans think differently," he said simply. Then he pointed to the lead ship's debris. "And those aren't pirate markings under the paint. That's a Dominion military seal." Reed's face paled. "The Dominion has been pushing for war with Earth for years. If they're staging fake pirate attacks, then we need to get you to that summit," Jack finished. "With evidence." As they limped toward the diplomatic station, neither of them realized that combat footage from the Persistence's external cameras was already spreading across the galactic networks, showing something the older species had never seen before: a human pilot rewriting the rules of space combat. The war had already begun. The diplomatic station hung in space like a massive metal flower, its petals formed by docking bays extending from a central core. When the damaged Persistence limped into its assigned bay, emergency crews rushed to meet it, their faces showing surprise at the ship's condition. Jack helped Ambassador Reed down the ramp, both of them tired but determined. A small group of officials waited, including a tall blue-skinned alien with ridge-like features and formal military dress. "Ambassador Reed," the station commander greeted her. "We received your emergency transmission. Are you unharmed?" "Thanks. To Pilot Miller, yes," Reed replied. She gestured to the ship. "We have evidence that needs to be presented to the summit immediately." The blue-skinned alien stepped forward, towering over Jack. "Evidence of pirate activity? Regrettable, but hardly summit business." "Admiral Coron," Reed acknowledged with a cold nod. These weren't pirates, they were Dominion military vessels disguised as pirates. Coron's face remained impassive, but his inner eyelids flickered, a sign of surprise in his species. "A serious accusation. Do you have proof?" Jack held up a data chip. "Combat recordings and debris analysis. The Dominion seal was visible under the fake pirate markings." "Impossible," Coron dismissed. "No single pilot in a diplomatic shuttle could defeat 3 combat vessels regardless of their origin." Jack met the alien's four-eyed gaze steadily. "Then I guess impossible things happen sometimes." The emergency summit session buzzed with tension. Representatives from 27 species filled the chamber, their voices creating a storm of different languages that the translation system struggled to keep up with. On the main display, the combat footage from the Persistence played. Jack watched the recording with professional detachment, noting details he'd missed in the heat of battle. His spatial maneuver looked even stranger from outside. The ship seemed to flicker and distort as it moved in ways that defied conventional physics. The Dominion representative, Commander Vell, rose to speak when the recording ended. His species, resembled tall, thin humans with gray skin and eyes that reflected light like a cat's. "This is clearly fabricated," Vel insisted. "The movements shown are physically impossible. The human is trying to provoke conflict with these false accusations." "I can assure you the footage is authentic," Reed countered. "And the maneuvers, while unusual, are quite possible. Just not according to your combat doctrines." Admiral Coron studied the replay with narrowed eyes. "No ship can change vector that way without tearing itself apart. The physics don't allow it." From the back of the room, a voice called out, "Actually, they do." Heads turned as a stocky human with wild brown hair pushed through the crowd. He wore the patch of the station's engineering corps on his jumpsuit. "Tom Hayes," he introduced himself, nodding respectfully to the assembly. "Station physics specialist. I've reviewed the footage, and what Pilot Miller did is theoretically sound, just never successfully implemented before." Hayes brought up a holographic display showing equations and force diagrams. "Human neural processing allows for faster spatial calculations than most species. We think differently about three-dimensional movement." Jack found himself nodding. He'd never thought about the physics behind his flying. He just did what felt right in the moment. "Even if this is true," Commander Vel interjected, "it proves nothing about the identity of the attackers." "Except for this," Ambassador Reed said, and nodded to a technician. The display changed to show a magnified image of debris floating in space, clearly showing a Dominion military seal beneath scratched-off pirate markings. The chamber erupted in chaos. After the session adjourned in disorder, Jack found himself in a quiet corner of the station's observation deck, watching distant stars. He sensed someone approach and turned to find Tom Hayes grinning at him. "The famous rule breaker," Hayes said, extending his hand. "Your flying is going to revolutionize combat theory." Jack shook the offered hand. "I was just trying to stay alive." "That's the beauty of it," Hayes replied, excitement clear in his voice. "You've discovered something profound because you weren't constrained by what everyone knows is impossible." He pulled out a small device and projected a model of the Persistence's flight path. "See here? You created a localized distortion in space-time that the targeting systems couldn't predict. The Alliance races can't do that because their neural pathways process spatial relationships differently." "You're saying humans are special?" Jack asked skeptically. "I'm saying we're different," Hayes corrected. "Not better, just we see patterns others don't and miss patterns they see." A shadow fell across them. Admiral Coron had approached silently, his expression unreadable. "Your maneuver was unexpected," the Admiral admitted reluctantly. "In 300 years of combat experience, I have never seen such an approach." Jack wasn't sure if that was a compliment. "Necessity breeds innovation." "Perhaps." Corin's inner eyelids flickered again. "But innovation can be dangerous, especially when it spreads." He handed Jack a tablet showing feeds from across galactic networks. Jack's combat footage had leaked and gone viral. Discussions, analyses, and attempts to replicate his maneuvers were happening everywhere. "Human pilots across 3 sectors are already attempting to reproduce your techniques," Coron said gravely. "The Dominion sees this as a military threat." Before Jack could respond, alarms blared throughout the station. The emergency communication system activated. "Attention all personnel," the station commander's voice announced. "We have received reports of Dominion fleet movements near human colonies. They are calling it a preventative security operation. All representatives please return to the summit chamber immediately." Tom Hayes' face paled. "They're afraid of what you've shown is possible." "Because of one pilot?" Jack asked in disbelief. "Admiral," Corin's expression was grim. "Because of what one pilot represents. A new way of fighting that their defenses aren't prepared for." He turned to leave, then paused. "In my experience, fear is the most common reason for starting wars." As they hurried back to the summit chamber, Jack saw his combat footage playing on screens throughout the station. What had been a desperate fight for survival was now something else. A symbol, a challenge to the established order of space. Combat. On one screen, a Dominion official was speaking. These human combat techniques represent an unacceptable security risk to established galactic peace. We must act decisively to contain this threat before it spreads. Jack felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. He had only been trying to survive, to complete his mission. Now, without intending to, he had provided the spark that might ignite a galactic war. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice whispered that perhaps this confrontation had been inevitable from the moment humans reached for the stars. The summit chamber had transformed from a place of diplomatic discussion to a war room in less than 6 hours. Emergency lights cast harsh shadows across worried faces as representatives argued loudly. At the center of the chamber, a holographic display showed Dominion warships moving toward human settlements near the border regions. Jack stood beside Ambassador Reed, watching the chaos unfold. The Dominion's representative, Commander Vell, had conveniently disappeared before the emergency session began. "They're calling it a security operation," Reed said, her voice tight with anger. 23 ships against farming colonies with no military presence. Admiral Coron approached them, his blue skin looking almost gray under the emergency lighting. "The Dominion Council claims they are neutralizing a strategic threat." He looked directly at Jack. That's absurd," Tom Hayes protested, joining the group. "They're attacking civilians because of one pilot's defensive maneuver?" "Not the maneuver itself," Coron corrected. "What it represents. The footage of your battle has been viewed by millions across the galaxy. Human pilots everywhere are experimenting with new techniques based on your approach." Jack felt a cold weight in his stomach. "I didn't ask for any of this." "Few who change history ever do," Coron replied. The main display shifted to show a transmission from Earth Defense Headquarters. The stern face of Admiral Chen filled the screen. "The Dominion has declared all human vessels to be potential military threats," Chen reported. "They've given us an ultimatum. Ground our entire fleet or face open conflict." Reed stepped forward. "Admiral, we have evidence that the Dominion staged the attack on our diplomatic shuttle. They're creating a pretext for war." "We've seen the evidence," Chen confirmed. "But grounding our fleet would leave Earth defenseless. The Security Council has rejected their demands." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in stunned silence. "So it begins," Coron said quietly. 3 days later, Jack found himself in a hastily repurposed laboratory on the diplomatic station. Tom Hayes had converted the space into a tactical simulation center with screens showing combat data from the increasing skirmishes between human and Dominion forces. "The problem," Hayes explained to Jack and Admiral Coron, "is that your maneuver only works once. The Dominion is already adapting their targeting systems." Jack nodded grimly. Reports from the front lines confirmed it. The trick that had saved the Persistence wouldn't work again. The Dominion ships were now programmed to predict the spatial distortion effect. "But that's just one technique," Jack said. "If humans really do process spatial relationships differently, there must be other approaches." Coron, who had surprisingly offered his expertise to the humans, manipulated the holographic display. "Traditional combat doctrine is based on power and position. Bigger ships, better position, more firepower. That's been the way of space warfare for 1,000 years. But we don't have bigger ships," Jack pointed out. "No," Hayes agreed with a growing smile. "But what if we use our different way of seeing space to change how small ships work together?" For the next 12 hours, the unlikely trio worked on something new, a combat formation that Hayes dubbed the Swarm Dance. It utilized multiple, smaller vessels moving in patterns that created confusion in standard targeting systems. "It's like a flock of birds," Jack explained as they ran simulations. "Each individual follows simple rules, but the group creates complex patterns that are hard to predict." "Impossible to predict," Coron corrected, studying the results with growing respect. "Because the pattern emerges from the group, not from a central command." As they refined the technique, news arrived that the Alliance Council had fractured. Several species had aligned with the Dominion against the human threat, while others remained neutral. Only a few had spoken in humanity's defense. "We're running out of time," Hayes said, looking at a display showing Dominion forces advancing on the Proxima colony. Then we need to test this now, Jack replied. He turned to Coron. I need a ship. The command center of Earth Defense Force Outpost Delta 7 buzzed with nervous energy as Jack explained the swarm dance technique to 12 human pilots. These weren't the elite forces. They were patrol pilots, border guards, and courier runners, the only ones close enough to intercept the Dominion fleet heading for Proxima Colony. This breaks every rule in the manual, one pilot objected. That's the point, Jack replied. They expect us to follow rules. Their rules. Rules designed for their way of thinking. He showed them the simulation again. Trust your instincts. Humans have always been good at seeing patterns others miss. As the pilots prepared to launch in their mismatched collection of vessels, Admiral Coron approached Jack. I've analyzed your chances, the alien said quietly. The Dominion fleet outguns you 10-1. Jack nodded. I know. Yet you still go. Those colonists have no other defense, Jack said simply. Something changed in Coron's four-eyed gaze. A new respect, perhaps even understanding. Then I will join you. Jack blinked in surprise. You're an Alliance Admiral. If you fight against the Dominion, I am sworn to protect peace, Coron replied. Sometimes that requires taking sides. The battle at Proxima's orbital approach became the stuff of legends. 13 small ships against a Dominion battle group should have been a massacre. Instead, it became the first demonstration of the swarm dance. The human vessels moved in seemingly random patterns that actually followed complex mathematical relationships. They appeared to be everywhere and nowhere, their movements impossible to predict by traditional targeting algorithms. Coron's ship provided covering fire as Jack led the swarm through the heart of the Dominion formation. The enemy vessels, accustomed to fighting in orderly patterns, found themselves firing at empty space as the humans danced between their shots. For 30 minutes, the impossible battle continued. The human ships darted and wove, landing precise hits on Dominion weapons and sensors while avoiding their main guns. They didn't try to destroy the larger vessels, just disable them. When it ended, 7 of the 13 small ships had been damaged, but all remained operational. The Dominion fleet, though largely intact, was in disarray. Their formation had collapsed, and 3 of their main vessels had lost weapons capability. As the Dominion ships retreated, communications channels across the galaxy lit up with the news. A handful of small ships had forced a major Dominion battle group to withdraw. More importantly, the battle footage showed something that shocked military strategists throughout the galaxy. Humans weren't fighting to destroy. They had deliberately targeted weapons and sensors while avoiding life support and crew quarters. You could have destroyed their command ship, Coron noted as they watched the Dominion retreat. Why didn't you? Jack looked at the alien who had become an unexpected ally. Because this isn't about destroying enemies. It's about showing there's another way to fight, and another way to end fights. As they returned to the outpost, news arrived that human colonies across 3 sectors were reporting Dominion ships withdrawing from orbit. The immediate threat had passed, but something more significant had changed. The galaxy now knew that humans didn't just fight differently. They thought differently about what winning meant, and that made them more dangerous, or more valuable, than anyone had imagined. The war had escalated, but so had the stakes. And Jack Miller once, a demoted pilot on escort duty, had become the face of a revolution in space combat that could change the balance of power forever. The name Rule Breaker followed Jack Miller everywhere now. It was whispered in the corridors of the diplomatic station, flashed across information networks throughout human space, and spoken with either fear or admiration in alien councils. 2 weeks after the battle at Proxima, humanity found itself in an unexpected position, respected and feared in equal measure. Jack hated it. I didn't ask to be a symbol, he told Tom Hayes as they worked in their makeshift tactical lab. The space had grown since their first days, with additional screens and simulation equipment provided by Earth Defense Command. Symbols rarely volunteer for the job, Hayes replied, manipulating a holographic display showing the latest Dominion fleet movements. But the swarm dance technique has given our colonies a fighting chance. Jack nodded reluctantly. Reports from across human space confirmed that smaller defense forces using the new tactics could hold their own against numerically superior Dominion fleets. For the first time since the conflict began, humanity wasn't just running and hiding. Admiral Coron entered the lab, his blue face showing signs of fatigue. As the only Alliance admiral to openly side with humans, he'd been officially censured by his government but allowed to remain as an observer, a thin excuse that let him continue helping without his species officially taking sides. "They're adapting," Coron announced without preamble, transferring data to the main display. "The Dominion has developed specialized countermeasures for the swarm dance." The screen showed footage from a recent battle near Europa Station. Human ships moved in the now familiar swarm pattern, but Dominion vessels released clouds of micro-drones that created a targeting mesh, predicting movement corridors, and forcing the human ships into predictable evasion patterns. 3 human defense ships lost, Coron reported grimly. "The Dominion is learning." Jack studied the footage closely. "Then we need to learn faster." For days, the 3 worked on developing new tactics. The swarm dance had bought valuable time, but its effectiveness was declining as Dominion forces adapted. They needed something more fundamental, something that couldn't be easily countered. "The problem is physics itself," Hayes said late one night, rubbing his tired eyes. "We're still bound by the same laws of movement as everyone else, even if we visualize them differently." Jack stared at the equations floating in the holographic display. "What if we weren't?" Hayes looked up. "What do you mean?" "Quantum mechanics," Jack said slowly, an idea forming. "At the quantum level, particles can exist in multiple states simultaneously until observed. Theoretical physics isn't going to help us in combat," Hayes objected. But Coron had grown very still. "Perhaps it could," the alien said quietly. "There are rumors of experimental Dominion technology based on quantum uncertainty principles." Jack leaned forward. "What kind of technology?" "Nothing proven," Coron cautioned. "But there are reports of ships appearing to be in 2 places at once, confusing sensor systems." Hayes's eyes widened. "Quantum superposition applied to macroscopic objects? That should be impossible." "Many things should be impossible," Jack replied with a hint of a smile, "until someone does them anyway." For the next 3 days they worked on a concept Hayes dubbed the quantum shadow, a technique that used specialized field generators to create a temporary quantum uncertainty field around a ship. The field wouldn't make the ship truly exist in multiple locations, but it would create enough sensor confusion to make targeting systems uncertain about the ship's exact position. "It's not true quantum superposition," Hayes explained to the pilot selected to test the technique. "But it creates a similar effect for a few crucial seconds, long enough to evade targeting or land a precise hit. And it requires human spatial intuition," Jack added. "The pilot has to navigate based on feeling rather than instruments while the field is active. Most non-human species can't process the spatial disorientation." The pilots looked skeptical, but the growing casualty reports from across human space silenced most objections. They needed something new, something the Dominion couldn't easily counter. As testing of the quantum shadow technique progressed, Admiral Coron received a secure transmission from his homeworld. Jack found the Admiral in his quarters afterward, studying ancient-looking symbols on a datapad. "Bad news?" Jack asked. Coron seemed lost in thought. "Perhaps illuminating news." He gestured for Jack to sit. "My government has granted me access to historical archives not shared with humans before. They're still helping us? I thought your species was officially neutral." "Some truths transcend current politics," Coron replied. "These records suggest humans aren't the first species to demonstrate your unconventional approach to space physics." Jack leaned forward. "There were others?" Coron nodded. "A species called the predecessors, who vanished from galactic records about 15,000 years ago. There are fragmentary accounts of them using combat techniques that defied conventional understanding of space-time relationships." "What happened to them?" Coron's inner eyelids flickered, a sign of discomfort. The records are unclear. There was conflict with ancient power structures, then nothing. They simply disappear from history. A chill ran down Jack's spine. You think the same could happen to humans? I think, Corin said carefully, that those who challenge established ways of understanding the universe often face resistance, sometimes violent resistance. Before Jack could respond, an alarm blared throughout the station. The tactical display in Corin's quarters activated automatically, showing a massive Dominion fleet dropping out of faster-than-light travel near Proxima Colony. They're back, Jack said, already moving toward the door, and in much greater numbers. The battle for Proxima Colony would later be called the turning point of the conflict. 23 human ships equipped with prototype quantum shadow generators faced a Dominion battle group of over 70 vessels. On paper, it was a hopeless mismatch, but for the first crucial minutes, the new technique worked perfectly. Human ships flickered in and out of sensor certainty, appearing to be in multiple locations at once. Dominion targeting systems failed to get clear locks, while the human pilots, navigating by instinct during the quantum uncertainty, landed precise hits on key systems. Jack led the defense from the newly commissioned ship Defiance, coordinating the human response while demonstrating the effectiveness of the quantum shadow firsthand. For 20 minutes, victory seemed possible. Then the Dominion adapted again. They switched to wide dispersal weapons that didn't require precise targeting, filling space with so much destructive energy that exact location became irrelevant. The quantum uncertainty field provided no protection against this brute force approach. Fall back to secondary positions, Jack ordered as the first human ships began to report critical damage. Proximity formation, focus fire on their command vessels. But it was too late for a coordinated response. The human squadron was scattered, their formation broken by the Dominion's overwhelming firepower. Jack watched in horror as ship after ship reported critical failures or went silent entirely. The Defiance shuddered as a direct hit overloaded its shields. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems failed. Quantum generator offline, the tactical officer reported. We're visible to all targeting systems. Jack made a split-second decision. All power to engines. Get us between the Dominion fleet and the colony. As the damaged ship limped into position as a makeshift shield for the civilian colony below, Jack opened a channel to all remaining human vessels. Defensive positions only, he ordered. Protect the evacuation transports at all costs. The battle had been lost, but as the remaining human ships formed a last defensive line around the civilian evacuation, something unexpected happened. The Dominion fleet, poised for the killing blow, hesitated. They're holding position, the sensor officer reported in disbelief. On the main communication channel, a transmission from the Dominion command ship appeared. The stern face of a high-ranking Dominion officer filled the screen. Your tactics are unconventional, human, the officer said. But even more unexpected is your willingness to sacrifice yourselves for non-combatants. Jack met the alien's gaze steadily. That's what soldiers do. We protect those who can't protect themselves. A long moment of silence followed. The evacuation ships will be granted safe passage, the Dominion officer finally said. But this colony is now under Dominion control. Any human military vessel remaining in the system after the evacuation will be destroyed. As the transmission ended, Jack slumped in his command chair. They had lost the battle in the colony, but the civilians would survive, and perhaps more. Importantly, something had changed in how the Dominion saw humanity. It wasn't just human combat tactics that were unexpected, it was human values. As the Defiance limped away from Proxima with the last evacuation ships, Jack knew that innovation alone wouldn't win this war. The Dominion would always adapt to new tactics eventually. They needed something more fundamental, something that would change the nature of the conflict itself. They needed to understand why the Dominion truly feared humanity's different way of thinking. The emergency council chamber aboard the Earth Alliance flagship Determination hummed with tense voices. 3 months had passed since the battle at Proxima Colony. The war had settled into a grinding stalemate. Humans continued to develop innovative tactics, and the Dominion continued to adapt. Neither side could gain a decisive advantage, But the human colonies were paying the heaviest price. Jack stood at the viewport, staring at the distant stars while Admiral Coron and Tom Hayes argued with Earth's military leadership. Dark circles marked Jack's eyes. He hadn't slept properly since Proxima. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the ships lost under his command. The quantum shadow technique isn't enough, General Ward was saying. We need something more decisive. More destructive, you mean? Hayes countered. We've been down that path. The Dominion simply escalates in response. Jack turned from the viewport. Why do they fear us so much? That's the question we should be asking. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to him. They attacked us first, General Ward reminded him. They disguised their ships as pirates and tried to destroy a diplomatic vessel. But why? Jack pressed. What made them so afraid of humans that they risked galactic war to contain us? Admiral Coron stepped forward, holding the ancient datapad he had been studying for weeks. I believe I may have found an answer. He placed the pad on the central display table and holographic symbols filled the air above it, text in a language no human had seen before. These are records from the predecessor civilization I mentioned, Coron explained. My government granted full access to the archives after Proxima. What we found is troubling. The symbols shifted, forming patterns that the translation system struggled to convert. The predecessors were feared because they were what the ancient texts call pattern breakers, Coron continued. Beings who could perceive relationships in space-time that other species could not. The ancient powers feared this ability because it represented unpredictability. Like humanity's spatial intuition, Hayes said quietly. Coron nodded. There's more. The texts speak of a prophecy that pattern breakers would one day return and either bring chaos to the galaxy or usher in a new age of understanding. The Dominion leadership believes humans are these returning pattern breakers. Jack stared at the ancient symbols. They're fighting us because of a prophecy? Fear rarely needs logical justification, Coron replied. Especially fear of the unknown. General, Ward frowned. This is all very interesting, but how does it help us end this war? Jack's mind was racing through possibilities. It means we've been fighting the wrong battle. We've been trying to win through better combat techniques, but that just confirms their fears about us. He looked around the room. What if instead of showing how humans fight differently, we show how humans can create differently? For the next week, Jack, Hayes, and Coron worked with a team of Earth's best engineers on something completely new. Not a weapon or combat technique, but a revolutionary propulsion system that combined human spatial intuition with the quantum principles they had discovered while developing the quantum shadow. If this works, Hayes explained to the council, it will allow faster-than-light travel without the massive energy requirements of current systems. Smaller ships, less fuel, safer transitions between normal space and FTL. And how does a new engine end a war? General Ward asked skeptically. Because we're going to give it away, Jack said simply. The silence that followed was profound. Give away our most advanced technology? To the enemy? Ward finally spluttered. Jack nodded. To everyone, the Dominion, the Alliance, Independent, worlds. Everyone gets the same technology, the same advantages. That's unprecedented, one of the council members said. Exactly, Jack replied. That's the point. We show them that pattern breakers don't have to bring chaos. We can bring progress if they'll let us. The test of the new propulsion system was scheduled to take place in neutral space, with observers from all major galactic powers invited to witness it. As preparations continued, long-range sensors detected a massive Dominion fleet approaching. The test site. They're not here to observe, General Ward warned. They're here to destroy the prototype before we can demonstrate it. Jack studied the tactical display. The human defensive fleet was outnumbered 3-1. Then we need to show them something else first. He turned to Coron. I need your help, and I need the Defiance ready to launch in 1 hour. The Defiance, repaired and upgraded since Proxima, moved ahead of the human defensive line as the Dominion fleet approached. Behind it, the prototype ship with the new drive system remained on standby. its revolutionary engine humming with potential. Dominion command vessel is hailing us, the communications officer reported. On screen, Jack ordered. The face of Commander Vell, the Dominion representative who had disappeared from the diplomatic station months ago, appeared on the main display. This demonstration will not proceed, Vell stated flatly. The pattern breaker. Technology must be contained. Jack met his gaze calmly. You've been fighting us because you think we'll bring chaos to the established order. What if you're wrong? The prophecy? Prophecies can be interpreted many ways, Jack interrupted. The text speaks of pattern breakers bringing either chaos or understanding. Which outcome happens depends not just on us, but on how you choose to respond to us. Vell's expression remained cold. Words will not deter us. The prototype will be destroyed. Jack nodded as if expecting this answer. Then perhaps a demonstration of a different kind will. He cut the transmission and turned to his tactical officer. Activate the quantum shadow. The Defiance's experimental system powered up, creating the now familiar quantum uncertainty field around the ship. But instead of using it to evade or attack, Jack ordered the ship directly toward the heart of the Dominion fleet. Sir? The helm officer questioned. Trust me, Jack said. And signal Admiral Coron. Execute Phase 2. As the Defiance approached the Dominion formation, something unexpected happened. The quantum field expanded, encompassing not just the human ship, but the nearest Dominion vessels as well. On all ships, sensors fluctuated wildly as the boundaries between them seemed to blur. What is happening? Vell demanded over an open channel, his voice betraying fear for the first time. We call it a quantum bridge, Jack replied. A shared state of quantum uncertainty between vessels. Right now your ships and mine exist in a connected state. We can either emerge from it as enemies or as something else. In the strange quantum space between certainties, Jack could almost feel the presence of the Dominion crews, their confusion, their fear, but also their curiosity. In that moment of connection, understanding flowed both ways. You can destroy us, Jack continued, or you can join us in creating something new. The choice has always been yours. For a long moment, there was silence across all communication channels. Then, slowly, the Dominion weapons powered down. We will observe your demonstration, Vell finally said. The prototype ship with the new drive system performed flawlessly, transitioning to faster-than-light travel with less than a tenth of the energy required by conventional systems. More importantly, the detailed specifications and theoretical principles were transmitted to all observers simultaneously. No secrets, no hidden advantages. As the demonstration concluded, representatives from both the Dominion and Alliance requested emergency sessions to discuss the implications. For the first time since the conflict began, genuine diplomatic talks replaced military posturing. 1 week later, Jack found himself back on the observation deck of the diplomatic station, where everything had started. Admiral Coron joined him, watching as ships from dozens of species moved through nearby space, no longer in combat formations but in orderly traffic patterns. The quantum bridge was a significant risk, Coron observed. You had no way of knowing how they would react to such intimacy with a human ship. Jack smiled faintly. Sometimes you have to break the rules of engagement entirely. The provisional peace accord is holding, Coron noted. The Dominion has withdrawn from human colonies, and your government has shared the propulsion technology as promised. And the prophecy about pattern breakers? Coron's inner eyelids flickered, an expression Jack now recognized as amusement. Reinterpreted, as prophecies often are. Now they say pattern breakers were meant to challenge existing patterns so new ones could emerge, not to bring chaos but to prevent stagnation. Jack gazed out at the stars. And the truth? Truth is rarely simple, Coron replied. Humans do think differently than most species. That makes you unpredictable, which can be frightening. But it also makes you innovative, which can be valuable. The galaxy needed both perspectives, the stability of established patterns and the creativity to break them when necessary. A small ship approached the station, the first vessel built by a joint human-Dominion engineering team, using the new propulsion system combined with Dominion defensive technology. "What will you do now?" Coron asked. The pilot who rewrote "The rules of space combat" has become something of a legend. Jack smiled. "I think I'd like to teach, not just humans, but anyone who wants to learn a different way of seeing space." Coron nodded approval. The new Interspecies Flight Academy would welcome such an instructor. As they watched the joint-designed ship dock smoothly with the station, Jack thought about how a desperate maneuver to save one small diplomatic vessel had cascaded into a war and then into an unexpected peace. The rules of space combat had indeed been rewritten, but so had the rules of space cooperation. And perhaps that had been the point all along. Not to win through destruction, but to show that seeing the universe differently didn't have to be a threat. It could be the greatest gift one species could offer another. Behind them, the first class of the new academy, pilots from 20 different species, including both humans and Dominion, waited to learn how to see space through each other's eyes. The war was over. The learning had just begun. The human starship Tenacity drifted silently through the void, its bulky frame a sharp contrast to the sleek vessels that normally traveled these parts of space. Captain Jack Moore stood on the bridge, his weathered face reflecting in the reinforced glass as he stared out at the stars. "Captain, we're picking up an unknown signal," said Officer Dan, his fingers moving quickly across the control panel. "It's not matching any human patterns." Jack straightened his uniform. After 15 years in space, this was what they had been waiting for. "First contact," he whispered. The Tenacity wasn't the most advanced ship in the human fleet, but it was reliable. While newer ships focused on streamlined designs and automated systems, the Tenacity was built differently. It had backup systems for its backup systems. It had manual controls that could work without power. It had parts that could be fixed with simple tools. Some called it outdated. Jack called it prepared. "Put it on screen," he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a ship unlike anything they had seen before. It gleamed like polished metal, with no visible engines or weapons. It moved with a grace that made the Tenacity seem like a rock by comparison. "They're hailing us, sir," Dan reported. Jack nodded. "Accept the call." The face that appeared on screen wasn't what anyone expected. The alien had smooth blue skin with small ridges, where eyebrows would be on a human. Its eyes were large and entirely black. "I am Commander Ento of the Vril Confederation," the alien said, its mouth moving strangely around the words. Some kind of translator was working. "You are trespassing in Vril space." Jack stepped forward. "I'm Captain Jack Moore of the Earth, ship Tenacity. We weren't aware this sector belonged to anyone. We come in peace and wish to establish friendly relations." Ento's eyes narrowed. "Your ship, it is very strange. Our scans show multiple redundant systems and—" "Are those manual controls?" "Yes," Jack answered proudly. "The Tenacity is designed to function under almost any conditions." A sound came from Ento that the translator couldn't quite catch, but it sounded like laughter. "Primitive," Ento said finally. "But we are not hostile to developing species. The Vril Confederation welcomes peaceful contact. We invite you to our nearest outpost for proper diplomatic talks." Jack didn't miss the condescending tone, but first contact was too important to risk over pride. "We accept your invitation." 3 days later, Jack and his small team sat in a large, perfectly circular room aboard the Vril station. The walls pulsed with soft light, and the temperature adjusted constantly to match human comfort levels. Commander Ento sat across from them with 3 other Vril officials. They had been discussing trade and knowledge exchange, but the conversation kept turning to human technology, specifically their ships. "Your vessels are fascinating in their simplicity," said one Vril official named Tool. "You build as if expecting systems to fail." "Because systems do fail," replied Jack. "Space is dangerous and unpredictable. Only if your technology is flawed," said Ento. "Vril ships haven't experienced a critical failure in over 300 years. Jack's second-in-command, Lisa Green, leaned forward. And if you encountered something new, something you hadn't prepared for? Ento's face remained expressionless. The Vril prepare for all possibilities through superior design and perfect execution. Your human approach of, what do you call it, redundancy? It's wasteful. And these backup systems you speak of, mechanical controls that don't require power, paper maps of space? These are the marks of a species that doesn't trust its own creations, or a species that respects the unknown, Jack countered. The meeting continued for hours, with the Vril explaining their advanced propulsion systems, their perfect communication network, their flawless defense systems. With each explanation, their tone grew more dismissive of human achievements. As they walked back to their shuttle, Lisa whispered to Jack, "They think we're children playing with toys." Jack nodded grimly. "And that worries me." Over the next few weeks, the Tenacity crew learned more about the Vril. They were an ancient species that had mastered space travel thousands of years before humans left Earth. They had encountered many other species, most less advanced than themselves. The Vril spoke of these encounters as guiding these species, but something in their tone made Jack uncomfortable. His worries grew when Officer Dan discovered hidden files in the data the Vril had shared. Files that showed what happened to species that resisted Vril guidance. "They've been systematically taking over," Jack said as they reviewed the evidence in the secure meeting room. "Not through war, at least not usually. They establish contact, share some technology, make the other species dependent on them, and then gradually take control." "And if a species resists?" asked Lisa. Jack pointed to the screen showing the remains of a planet called Doral. "They make examples." "We need to warn Earth," said Dan. "Already done," Jack replied. "But the message will take weeks to reach home. Until then, we play along." The next day, Commander Ento invited Jack to observe Vril military exercises. A display of friendship, he called it. Jack watched as 50 Vril ships moved in perfect formation, executing maneuvers with precision that human fleets could only dream of. Their tactics were flawless, their coordination perfect. "Impressive," Jack admitted. "This is merely a basic exercise," said Ento. "The Vril understand true strategy, not the chaos that humans call warfare." "What do you mean?" asked Jack, keeping his tone curious rather than defensive. "We've studied your military history," Ento explained. "Your generals praise adaptability and unpredictability. You value the ability to, how do you say it, think on your feet? True strategy requires perfect planning and execution, not desperate improvisation." As Jack watched the Vril ships move like a single organism, he thought about Earth's history, about battles won by breaking formation, about victories claimed through surprise and adaptation, about the countless times that humanity's desperate improvisation had saved them from extinction. "Perhaps," Jack said carefully, "different species develop different approaches based on their experiences." Ento made that untranslatable sound again, definitely laughter. "A diplomatic answer, Captain Moore, but history favors perfection, not improvisation. Remember that when your people consider their response to our offer of guidance." As Jack returned to the Tenacity that evening, he knew that war was coming. The Vril would never accept humanity as equals, and humans would never accept being controlled. "Set course away from the Vril outpost," he ordered as he reached the bridge. "We need to prepare." Behind them, the perfect formations of Vril ships continued their flawless exercises, unaware that they would soon face an enemy who thrived on the very chaos they despised. 2 months after first contact, the Tenacity orbited Earth's largest colony on the planet horizon. Captain Jack Moore stared at the message on his screen with a deep frown. "They can't be serious," he muttered. "What is it, sir?" asked Lisa, who stood nearby reviewing security protocols. Jack turned the screen so she could see. "The Vril are demanding that all human colonies accept their protection. They want permanent Vril bases on every human world and veto power over our expansion efforts." "That's not protection," Lisa said. "That's control." Jack nodded grimly. "Earth Command agrees. They've rejected the demands." The door to the bridge slid open as Lieutenant Tom Wilson entered. Tom was the Tenacity's tactical officer, a position he'd earned through unconventional thinking rather than top academy scores. "Captain, you wanted to see me?" Tom asked. "Yes." Jack gestured to the screen. "We're being assigned to protect the outer colonies. Earth expects the Vril to make a show of force." Tom studied the message, his eyes narrowing. "They'll target smaller outposts first, make an example without risking a full-scale war." "That's what Command thinks too. We're heading to New Haven. It's our most distant colony and the most vulnerable." 3 days later, the Tenacity arrived at New Haven, a small mining colony with only basic defenses. They weren't alone for long. Within hours, 3 Vril ships appeared at the edge of the system. "They're hailing us," Officer Dan reported. The main screen flickered to life, revealing a stern-faced Vril with decorated armor. "I am Admiral Nax of the Vril Enforcement Fleet. You will remove your vessel from this system immediately. This colony now falls under Vril protection." Jack stood tall. "This is a human colony on a planet we discovered and settled. We reject your claim." Nax's black eyes seemed to glitter. "Your rejection is noted, Captain, but meaningless. One human ship cannot stand against even a small Vril force. Your strategy of placing outdated vessels as defenders is puzzling. Perhaps there's more to our strategy than you understand," Jack replied calmly. "There is no depth to primitive thinking," Nax said dismissively. "You have 6 hours to depart." As the screen went dark, Lisa turned to Jack. 6 ships against 3 isn't bad odds." "6?" Jack raised an eyebrow. Tom smiled slightly. "The Tenacity counts as 4 in my book. Those Vril ships are perfectly designed, but they've never faced anything like us." Jack nodded. "Let's make sure we're ready. Tom, I want unusual tactics, the kind that would make an academy instructor fail you." "Those are my specialties, sir." 6 hours later, the Vril ships approached in perfect formation. Their sleek hulls gleamed in the light of New Haven's sun as they moved with synchronized precision. "They're charging weapons," Dan reported. "Launch our decoys," ordered Jack. The Tenacity released 6 small objects that appeared on scanners as full-sized ships. A simple trick, but one that might work. "The Vril are adjusting formation," Tom reported. "They're spreading out to engage. All targets." Jack leaned forward. "Now take us in, full thrust, then cut engines on my mark." The Tenacity surged forward, accelerating directly toward the lead Vril ship. At the last moment, Jack shouted, "Mark!" The engines went silent and the ship's momentum carried it forward while its heat signature vanished from sensors. An old smuggler's trick that Tom had suggested. "They've lost us," Lisa said with surprise. The Vril ships fired on the decoys, their perfect formation becoming a liability as they focused on targets that weren't there. "Bring us alongside the lead ship," Jack ordered. "Weapons ready." The Tenacity drifted silently into position. On the view screen they could see the Vril vessel up close, beautiful, elegant, and completely unaware of their presence. "Fire," Jack commanded. The Tenacity's weapons might not have been the most advanced, but at this range they didn't need to be. The Vril ship's perfect hull cracked under the barrage, its systems failing. "The other Vril ships are turning to engage," Dan warned. "Evasive pattern Delta," Jack ordered. Tom had designed Delta pattern specifically for this encounter. Instead of the smooth, predictable evasions that most ships used, it involved random thruster bursts, sudden stops, and changes in direction that defied tactical sense. On screen, they watched as the Vril weapons fired with precision, at where the Tenacity should have been based on normal flight patterns, but the human ship was never where it was expected to be. "Their targeting systems can't adapt," Tom said with a grin. "They're designed for perfection against predictable opponents." The battle lasted 17 minutes. When it ended, 1 Vril ship was disabled, another severely damaged, and the third retreating at high speed. The bridge crew cheered, but Jack raised his hand for silence. This was just a test. They wanted to see how we would fight. "And what did they learn?" asked Lisa. "That we don't fight the way they expect," Jack replied. "That might confuse them for now, but they'll adapt." On the damaged Vril ship, Admiral Nax stared at the battle recordings with growing frustration. The human vessel had moved in patterns that defied logic. It had shut down systems in the middle of combat, a suicidal tactic by Vril standards. It had fired from positions no proper warship would take. Inefficient, he muttered. Wasteful, illogical. Yet the humans had won. Admiral, his second-in-command, approached cautiously. The High Command requests your report. Nax's eyes narrowed. Tell them the humans are more unpredictable than anticipated, but it changes nothing. Their victory was luck, not strategy. And if they continue to be lucky, then we will bring more ships, Nax said firmly. Luck fails against overwhelming force. Perfect execution cannot be defeated by chaos. Back on the Tenacity, Jack received a transmission from Earth Command. The Vril had declared that all human colonies must surrender within 30 days, or face consequences. They were positioning fleets near every human outpost. It's going to be a long war, Jack told his crew. But today we learned something important. The Vril might be advanced, but they don't understand us. They see our backups and redundancies as weaknesses. They see our adaptability as disorder. Tom nodded. They fight like they've never lost. We fight like we're used to it. And that, said Jack, might just save us all. As the Tenacity set course deeper into the colony system, its engines hummed with a rhythm that was distinctly imperfect, but reliable. Just like the humans who built it. The red alert klaxon woke Captain Jack Moore from a restless sleep. He was on his feet and pulling on his uniform before his mind fully registered what was happening. Captain, to the bridge, came Lisa's voice over the intercom. Multiple Vril ships approaching New Haven Colony. Jack rushed through the corridors of the Tenacity, passing crew members hurrying to battle stations. When he reached the bridge, the main screen showed a formation of 7 Vril vessels approaching the colony. Status report, Jack demanded as he took his command chair. 7 Vril warships entered the system 10 minutes ago, Lisa replied. They're heading straight for the colony. No response to our hails. Tom looked up from the tactical station. Their formation is different this time. They've spread out to prevent us from using the same trick. Jack nodded. They're learning. Should we retreat? Dan asked quietly. Those are heavy cruisers. We're outgunned. If we leave, New Haven falls, Jack said firmly. We stay. Tom, what options do we have? Tom's fingers danced across his console. I've been studying old Earth naval battles. Before ships had computers or even engines. They fought using wind and tide. We don't have wind in space, Lisa pointed out. Tom smiled. No, but we have gravity wells, solar radiation, and debris, fields. The Vril move like every part of space is the same. They don't use the environment. Show me, Jack ordered. Tom displayed a map of the system. Here's my plan. 30 minutes later, the Tenacity positioned itself between the oncoming Vril fleet and the colony. A single ship facing 7. They're hailing us, Dan announced. Admiral Nax's face appeared on screen. Captain Moore, your persistence is noted, but futile. Surrender your colony and withdraw. I have a counteroffer, Jack replied calmly. Leave human space and we won't destroy your fleet. Nax's expression didn't change, but his voice hardened. Your overconfidence will be your undoing. The screen went dark. They're powering weapons, Dan reported. Execute Phase 1, Jack ordered. The Tenacity fired its engines at full power, racing toward the approaching fleet. On the Vril command ship, Admiral Nax watched with confusion. The human vessel is on a direct collision course, his second-in-command reported. They wouldn't sacrifice their only ship, Nax reasoned. It must be a feint. Maintain formation and prepare to fire. The Tenacity continued its charge, accelerating to dangerous speeds. Now, Jack commanded when they were just moments from impact. The human ship abruptly cut its main engines and fired maneuvering thrusters, sending it into a spinning dive that barely missed the lead Vril ship while releasing a cloud of metallic particles in its wake. What was that? Demanded Nax as the particles obscured their sensors. The answer came seconds later as the Tenacity, now behind the Vril formation, fired its weapons directly at the debris cloud. The metallic particles amplified the energy, creating a blinding flash that temporarily disabled the Vril ship's sensitive targeting systems. Phase 2, Jack ordered. The Tenacity raced toward the nearby asteroid field, drawing 3 Vril ships in pursuit while the others remained temporarily blinded. "They're following," Lisa confirmed, just as Tom predicted. The human ship weaved through the asteroid field, taking paths too narrow for the larger Vril vessels. One Vril ship clipped an asteroid, sending it spinning into the path of another. Both vessels took damage but continued the pursuit. Meanwhile, engineer Kate Reed worked frantically in the engine room. The Tenacity had taken hits during their initial pass and systems were failing. "Coolant leak in Section 4, shouted her assistant. Kate grabbed a metal canister. "Old school fix," she muttered, spraying a substance that immediately hardened over the leak. It wasn't in any repair manual, but it would hold. On the bridge, Jack watched as the remaining 4 Vril ships regained their systems and moved to cut off the Tenacity's escape from the asteroid field. "We're surrounded," Dan said, his voice tight. "Good," Jack replied. "Execute Phase 3. The Tenacity suddenly shut down all systems except life support, appearing dead in space. The 7 Vril ships approached cautiously, their perfect formation now ragged after navigating the asteroid field. "The human vessel appears disabled," Nax's officer reported. "Shall we finish them?" Nax studied the sensor readings. "Something isn't right. Their power readings are too low. Scan for..." His order came too late. Hidden among the asteroids were the mining charges that the Tenacity had placed earlier, simple explosives normally used by the colonists to break up asteroids for mining. "Detonate," Jack ordered. The charges exploded, sending thousands of asteroid fragments in all directions. The Vril ships, clustered together around what they thought was a disabled prey, suddenly found themselves in a hailstorm of rocky debris. "Evasive maneuvers," Nax shouted. But the Vril ships weren't designed for quick, unpredictable movements. 2 smaller vessels took critical hits, their perfect hulls punctured in multiple places. The others scattered, their formation breaking completely. "Now, Kate," Jack called over the intercom. In the engine room, Kate bypassed safety protocols and rerouted emergency power. The Tenacity roared back to life, its weapons targeting the disorganized Vril ships one by one. The battle raged for another hour. The Tenacity took heavy damage. Its hull breached in 3 sections, weapon systems failing, engines operating at minimal capacity. But the Vril fleet fared worse. 3 ships destroyed, 2 crippled, and the remaining 2, including Nax's command vessel, retreating from the system. "They're running," Lisa said in disbelief. Jack slumped in his chair, feeling every one of his years. "Status report. Hull breaches on decks 3, 5, and 7, Dan replied. "Emergency force fields holding. Weapons at 30%. Engines at 25%. Casualties, 12 injured, no deaths." Jack nodded, relief washing over him. "Get me Kate on the comm." Kate's soot-covered face appeared on a small screen. "We're holding together, Captain. Barely. I've got teams using manual patches on the worst breaches." "Good work. How long until we're operational?" Kate wiped sweat from her brow. "With proper facilities, 3 weeks with what we have here? I can get us moving in 3 days, but we'll be limping. Do what you can. The Vril will be back with more ships." After the communication ended, Tom approached Jack's chair. "Sir, we took some data from the Vril ships during the battle. Their systems are incredibly advanced, but they're centralized. No redundancies." "A weakness," Jack noted. "Yes. And their formations are perfect, but predictable. They don't adapt well to chaos." Jack stood slowly, wincing at the pain in his shoulder, from where he'd been thrown against a console during the battle. "Get that data to Earth Command. We need to share what we've learned with the fleet." 3 days later, as Kate had promised, the Tenacity limped away from New Haven Colony, leaving behind additional weapons and crew to help defend the outpost. They needed repairs that only Earth's shipyards could provide. On his command ship, Admiral Nax reviewed the battle footage for the 100th time. His perfect record was now tarnished. 7 ships against 1, and he had retreated. The human vessel's movements make no logical sense, he told his officers. They exposed vulnerabilities deliberately. They shut down systems mid-battle. They used mining explosives as weapons. Primitive tactics, one officer suggested. No, Nax replied, his voice cold. Not primitive, different, and dangerous. We have underestimated these humans. He stood and walked to the viewport, staring out at the stars. We will gather a larger fleet. We will study their tactics, and next time, we will crush this human ship and its captain. What Nax didn't understand, couldn't understand, was that the tenacity wasn't special because of its technology or firepower. It was special because of its crew. Humans who expected failure and prepared for it. Humans who improvised when plans collapsed. Humans who turned disadvantages into strengths. The war had truly begun, and neither side would ever be the same. The tenacity floated in Earth's orbital shipyard, its battle-scarred hull visible even from a distance. After 2 months of repairs, the ship looked less damaged, but far from new. The scorch marks and patched hull sections told a story of survival against impossible odds. Captain Jack Moore stood in the observation deck watching as workers finished the final repairs. Beside him, Admiral Cole from Earth Command studied a display showing the current positions of Vril forces. They've taken 3 more outposts since New Haven, Admiral Cole said grimly. But they've slowed their advance. They're being cautious now, Jack replied. We bloodied their nose. And they don't like that. The Admiral gestured to the display. Intelligence suggests they're gathering a massive fleet for a push into our core systems. We need to strike first. Jack raised an eyebrow. With what? Our ships are outmatched in almost every way. Except one. Admiral Cole smiled. Creativity. We're forming a special task force. 5 ships with captains who think like you do. Unconventional, adaptable, and the tenacity will lead them. 3 days later, the tenacity led its small fleet out of Earth orbit. The ships were a mixed group, some new, some old, all modified based on what they'd learned about Vril weaknesses. On the bridge, Jack addressed his expanded command team. Lisa remained as his second-in-command. Tom had been promoted to strategy officer, and engineer Kate had earned a place at the senior staff table after her miracle work at New Haven. The Vril expect us to defend, Jack explained. Instead, we're going to attack. Tom pointed to a star map. We've identified their primary communications relay in this sector. It coordinates all Vril fleet movements. Our first target. Kate spoke up. I've modified our communication systems to broadcast on Vril frequencies. We can send false orders, create confusion. Controlled chaos. Jack nodded approvingly. The thing the Vril understand least. The small human fleet traveled through 3 systems without detection, using a route that Vril ships never took, through the turbulent gases of a nebula that their sensors couldn't navigate effectively. It was risky, but as Jack had told his captains, safe paths lead to predictable outcomes. When they reached the Vril communications relay, they found it heavily guarded by 8 warships. They're scanning us, Dan reported from his station. Begin the deception, Jack ordered. Kate activated her modified transmitter, broadcasting a message that appeared to come from Vril High Command. The message ordered 6 of the 8 ships to investigate a false human incursion in a nearby system. On the lead Vril defender, confusion reigned. The commander checked and rechecked the authorization codes, which Kate had perfectly replicated from data captured during previous encounters. The codes are valid, the Vril commander told his officers, but the timing is unusual. Perhaps it relates to the human fleet movements reported yesterday, suggested his second. The commander hesitated, then made his decision. We will comply. 2 ships will remain to guard the relay. Jack watched as 6 Vril ships departed the area. Phase 2, he ordered. The 5 human ships split into 3 groups approaching from different vectors. When the remaining Vril ships moved to intercept the largest group, The others struck from behind. The battle was brief, but intense. Both Vril ships were destroyed, and 2 human vessels took heavy damage. We have 40 minutes before those other ships realize they've been tricked, Tom calculated. Let's make them count. Kate led a boarding team onto the relay station while the fleet stood guard. Inside, they found technology far beyond human capabilities, but Kate had studied the Vril systems extensively. They think in perfect patterns, she explained to her team. Their code is elegant but predictable. Her fingers flew across the alien console as she uploaded a virus. Not a sophisticated one by Vril standards, but one designed to create small, random errors. Not enough to shut systems down, but enough to create doubt in the precision the Vril relied on. Done, she announced after 20 minutes. Let's go. The human fleet departed just as the 6 Vril ships returned. They pursued, but the humans, scattered in different directions, each taking a different escape route, none of them logical by Vril standards. Back on Admiral Nax's flagship, the reports of the raid caused fury. How did they bypass our sensors? He demanded. How did they falsify command codes? His tactical officer had no answers that satisfied. The humans were behaving in ways that defied Vril military doctrine. The damage to the relay? Nax asked. Minimal, Admiral, but... The officer hesitated. Speak. There are anomalies in the system. Small errors in transmission. Data packets arriving out of sequence. Nothing critical, but perfect systems don't have errors. Nax finished, his anger growing. The humans are trying to create doubt in our technology. Over the next 2 weeks, the human task force struck 5 more Vril targets, never engaging in direct battles when they could avoid it, always leaving behind confusion and doubt. False communications sent Vril ships on wild pursuits. Supply. Depots found their inventory numbers mysteriously changed. Navigation beacons gave readings that were off by tiny, varying amounts. None of these actions would win the war directly. But together, they began to erode the Vril's greatest strength, their absolute confidence in their technological perfection. On the Tenacity, Jack received a transmission from Earth Command. The Vril had withdrawn from 2 occupied human colonies, apparently to consolidate their forces. It's working, Lisa said with cautious optimism. For now, Jack replied. But they're adaptable too, in their way. And Admiral Nax won't stop until he defeats us or we defeat him. As if summoned. By his words, alarms blared across the bridge. Multiple Vril signatures, Dan called out. 15, no, 20 ships. They were hiding behind the moon's magnetic field. All hands to battle stations, Jack ordered calmly. Tom, do we run or fight? Tom studied his tactical display. They've cut off our escape routes very thoroughly, almost like they knew where we'd go. They're learning, Jack said grimly. Signal the fleet, battle formation Delta. The 5 human ships moved into position, preparing to face a force 4 times their size. Jack knew the odds were terrible, but he had faced terrible odds before. Sir, Dan called out. The lead Vril ship is hailing us. Admiral Nax's face appeared on screen, his expression as cold as ever. Captain Moore, your raids have been instructive, but they end today. We'll see about that, Jack replied. No, Nax said with unusual emotion. You have been a worthy opponent, so I will tell you, you are already defeated. Your communication tricks? We've been tracking them. Your escape routes? We've studied them. Your chaotic tactics? We've analyzed them. Jack felt a chill. The Vril had adapted faster than expected. This time, Nax continued. We will not underestimate human unpredictability. We have prepared for every irrational move you might make. As the screen went dark, Jack looked at his crew. Well, he said with a grim smile, then we'll just have to be even more irrational than they expect. The Tenacity moved forward to meet the overwhelming Vril fleet, its battle-scarred hull gleaming in the light of an alien sun, ready for its greatest challenge yet. The Tenacity shuddered as another blast struck its port side. Warning lights flashed across the bridge as systems failed one after another. Captain Jack Moore gripped his command chair, watching as 20 Vril warships surrounded his small fleet. Status. Report, he called out, his voice steady despite the chaos. Hull breaches on decks 2 and 4, Dan replied. Shields at 17%. Weapons at 30%. 2 of our support ships have been disabled. Jack studied the tactical display. Admiral Nax had indeed learned from their previous encounters. The Vril ships moved in changing patterns, not the rigid formations they once favored. They anticipated the human vessel's evasive maneuvers, cutting off escape routes before they were taken. They're predicting our unpredictability, Tom said, frustration clear in his voice. Then we need to be unpredictable in a way they can't predict, Jack replied. He opened a channel to the engine room. Kate, I need options. Engineer Kate Reed's voice came through, background noise suggesting frantic repair work. The main drive is holding, but barely. If we push it past 80%, there's a good chance it'll explode. Jack exchanged looks with Lisa. And if we wanted it to explode? A pause. You want to blow up our own ship? I want the Vril to think we're blowing up our ship. Kate's laugh came through the comm. Now that's the kind of crazy I can work with. Give me 10 minutes. Jack turned to Tom. Signal the remaining ships. Tell them to execute fallback plan Omega on my mark. Omega, sir? That's a full retreat. That's what it looks like, yes. Understanding dawned on Tom's face as he sent the message. The 2 undamaged human ships acknowledged and prepared to break away from the battle. On his flagship, Admiral Nax watched the human fleet with growing satisfaction. His patience had paid off. After the humiliation at the relay station, he had dedicated himself to understanding human tactics. He had run thousands of simulations based on Earth's military history. He had studied the Tenacity's battle records until he could predict Captain Moore's moves before they happened. The smaller human vessels are preparing to flee, his tactical officer reported. Their formation suggests they will scatter in 3 directions. Ignore them, Nax ordered. Focus all fire on the Tenacity. That ship and its captain are the real threat. The Vril fleet intensified its attack on the human flagship, driving it backward. The Tenacity returned fire sporadically, its movements becoming erratic. Sir, Dan called out on the Tenacity's bridge. They're focusing everything on us. The other ships can escape. Good, Jack replied. Phase 2. Tom, set a collision course with Nax's flagship. Collision course, Tom confirmed, programming the suicidal trajectory. Jack opened a ship-wide channel. All hands prepare for emergency evacuation. This is not a drill. Proceed to escape pods on my mark. Lisa looked at him with concern. Jack, what are you planning? The one thing the Vril would never do themselves, he answered. Kate, status? Ready when you are, Captain, came the reply from engineering. But I'm staying aboard to finish this. Negative. That's an order. Kate, everyone gets off this ship. With respect, sir, someone needs to make the final adjustments manually. The automation is too damaged. Jack knew arguing would waste precious time. Understood. But you get to an escape pod the second it's done. The Tenacity accelerated toward the Vril flagship, weapons firing in a pattern that seemed desperate and uncoordinated. To Vril sensors, it appeared that the human ship was making a final futile attack. The human vessel is on a collision course. Nax's second in command, you reported. Their engine signature is becoming unstable. They're attempting self-destruction, Nax realized. A primitive sacrifice. Target their propulsion systems. The Vril ships adjusted their fire, trying to disable the approaching human vessel before it could reach them. But the Tenacity moved with unexpected bursts of speed, dodging just enough of the incoming fire to maintain its approach. Now, Jack ordered. Throughout the ship, crew members rushed to escape pods. On the bridge, Jack was the last to leave his post, ensuring all others had evacuated. In engineering, Kate worked feverishly, rerouting power and bypassing safety systems. As warnings blared around her, she made the final connections, then sprinted for the nearest escape pod. The Tenacity's engines flared with impossible brightness, radiation spilling from apparent breaches in the containment systems. To Vril sensors, it registered as a catastrophic failure. The ship was about to explode. Evasive maneuvers, Nax commanded too late. The Tenacity slammed into the side of the Vril flagship, but instead of exploding, something else happened. Kate's modifications released a massive electromagnetic pulse, combined with a specialized virus upload, directly into the Vril vessel's systems. The pulse spread from ship to ship through the Vril's interconnected network, something that would never happen in human vessels with their isolated systems. Lights flickered and died across the Vril fleet as their perfect technology failed them. In his escape pod, Jack watched as the Vril ships drifted powerless. His pod's simple mechanical systems, technology the Vril had mocked as primitive, continued to function perfectly. All pods report in, he ordered through the emergency channel. One by one, the crew confirmed their survival, all except one. Engineering pod, report, Jack called, tension in his voice. After a long pause, a weak signal came through. Engineering, reporting. Kate's voice sounded pained but alive. Did it work? See for yourself, Jack replied, relief washing over him. Through her pod's viewport, Kate could see the disabled Vril fleet. The Tenacity was still partially embedded in Nax's flagship, damaged beyond repair but victorious in its final mission. Hours later, human reinforcements arrived to find the Vril fleet still drifting helplessly. Admiral Nax's ship had managed to restore minimal power, enough for life support and communications. Jack's pod was brought aboard the lead human vessel, where he immediately took command of recovery operations. When a signal came from the Vril flagship, he accepted the call. Admiral Nax appeared on screen, his ship's lighting dim behind him. Captain Moore, he acknowledged. Admiral, Jack replied evenly. Your strategy was unexpected, to sacrifice your vessel in such a manner. Not sacrificed, used. Every part of it, right to the end. Nax was silent for a moment. The Vril Confederation requests terms for cessation of hostilities. Jack allowed himself a small smile. I'll connect you with Earth Command. They'll discuss the details. After the communication ended, Lisa approached Jack. We've recovered 97% of the crew. Kate's pod was damaged, but she'll recover. And the Tenacity? Lisa's expression softened. Beyond salvage. But they're already talking about building a new one, with some improvements based on what we've learned. Jack nodded, feeling the loss of his ship but pride in what they had accomplished. The Vril mocked our redundancies, our backups, our primitive approaches. They never understood that we built that way because we expect things to go wrong, and we adapt when they do, Lisa added. 3 months later, Jack stood in Earth's largest shipyard, watching as workers put the finishing touches on a new vessel. Beside him stood Kate, recovered from her injuries and now chief engineer of the new ship. What do you think? She asked, gesturing at the vessel. It's different, Jack admitted. The new ship incorporated some Vril technology, adapted to human design philosophy. It was more advanced than the original Tenacity, but still maintained the redundancies and backup systems that had proven so crucial. Different, but still ours, Kate agreed. And look what they're calling it. Jack smiled as he read the name being painted on the hull. Tenacity 2. Admiral Nax stood in the observation chamber of the Vril High Command, watching as engineers studied human technology. The peace treaty had included technology exchanges, monitored carefully by both sides. Their designs are inefficient, one engineer commented. Multiple systems performing the same function, manual backups that require physical operation. Yes, Nax agreed. And that is precisely why they defeated us. He turned to face the gathered Vril officers. We built our ships to be perfect, and when that perfection failed, we had no alternatives. The humans built expecting failure, preparing for it. They embraced chaos while we denied its existence. Nax gestured to the human devices. We will learn from them, as they learn from us. The next generation of Vril ships will incorporate redundancies. Our officers will study human history, human adaptability. As he spoke, a human delegation entered the chamber, led by a familiar face. Captain Moore, Nax greeted. Or should I say, Admiral Moore now. Jack nodded. Admiral Nax, I see your technicians are having fun with our primitive equipment. We are learning that different approaches have different values, Nax replied. Perhaps perfection is not found in flawless execution, but in the ability to continue despite flaws. As the two former enemies discussed the future, their ships orbited peacefully in the space above. Different designs, different philosophies, but each now incorporating lessons learned from the other. The war that began with mockery had ended with mutual respect, and with the understanding that true strategy meant adapting not just to the enemy, but to oneself. The red sun of Frontier cast long shadows across the colony's main square as Jack Adams finished his daily ritual. For the 15 years since communication with Earth had stopped, he had sent the same message into space. Colony Frontier still. Active. 46 survivors, resources low, please respond. Jack removed his headset and rubbed his tired eyes. The communications center was little more than a metal shed now, its once shiny equipment covered in the red dust that seemed to get everywhere on this planet. A calendar on the wall showed 5,475 marks, one for each day he had sent his message with no answer. Still talking to ghosts, Jack? Mary Peters appeared in the doorway, her face weathered from years of Frontier's harsh sun and thin atmosphere. Jack shrugged. Someone has to keep trying. Mary handed him a cup of the bitter drink they called coffee now, though it contained no actual coffee beans, just local plants that tasted similar enough to remember Earth by. Mark wants everyone at the meeting hall tonight, she said. The crops in Field 3 are failing. We need to decide what to do before winter. Jack nodded. The colony had been established as a mining outpost 15 years ago. 63 people sent to extract rare minerals and send them back to Earth. The supply ships were supposed to come every 6 months. Then the messages about war had arrived. Scattered. Reports of an interstellar conflict that seemed far away from their small corner of space. Then nothing. I'll be there, Jack said. Just let me shut down the systems for the night. Mary left and Jack began the careful process of powering down the communications array. Electricity was precious now, with only 2 functioning solar panels and 1 wind generator still working. As he flipped switches and turned dials, a light flashed on his console, something that hadn't happened in 15 years. The signal detector was picking up something in orbit. Jack's heart raced as he quickly reversed, his shutdown procedure powering everything back up. He adjusted frequencies, checking and rechecking to make sure it wasn't a mistake or equipment failure. Please be Earth, he whispered to himself. Please. The signal grew stronger. Jack worked frantically to clean it up, to identify its source. When the computer finally displayed the results, he froze. The signal patterns didn't match any known human design. Jack's hand trembled as he reached for the colony's internal communication system. Mark, he said, trying to keep his voice steady. You need to come to the comm center now. 20 minutes later, the small room was crowded with the colony's leadership. Mark Wilson, once a mining supervisor, and now the colony's leader by necessity, stood looking at the readouts with a deep frown. You're certain it's not one of ours? He asked. Positive, Jack said. The signal structure is completely different. And look at the size readings. He pointed to a radar display. It's massive. At least 3 times bigger than any Earth ship I've ever seen records of. Could it be a rescue? Asked Pete Brown, their engineer. Maybe Earth made new allies during the war. After 15 years of silence, Ben Harris, head of security, shook his head. He still carried the standard-issue pistol from their early days, one of the few weapons they had. I don't buy it. Emma Jones, their doctor, leaned forward. Whether they're friendly or not, we need to consider what this means if they're hostile. She didn't need to finish the thought. With their limited weapons and no defenses beyond the natural landscape, the colony would be helpless against any serious attack. We need to prepare for both possibilities, Mark decided. Jack, keep monitoring their communications, see if you can learn anything. Ben, get your security team together, such as it is. Pete, what can we use for defenses, if we need them? Not much, Pete admitted. Mining lasers maybe, if I reconfigure them. They're meant for cutting rock, not Whatever this is. Do what you can, Mark said. Everyone else, we tell the colony, but we keep it calm. No panic. We don't know anything. Yet, as the others filed out, Jack stayed at his station, scanning all frequencies for any hint of communication from the mysterious vessel. Night fell, and the red sun gave way to Frontier's 2 small moons. The colony's lights dimmed as people conserved power, but the communications center stayed lit and active. Just past midnight, Jack's console lit up again. "They're moving," he announced to Mark, who had stayed with him. "Coming into lower orbit." They watched in silence as the radar tracked the vessel's approach. It wasn't heading directly for the colony, but seemed to be making a survey of the planet. "They're scanning us," Jack said, pointing to new signal patterns. "Comprehensive scans, atmosphere, geography, and here." He pointed to a particular reading. "They're focusing on the colony now." Mark's face was grim in the blue light of the screens. "So they know we're here." The internal communication system crackled to life. Ben's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Mark, Jack, you need to get outside now." They rushed out of the communications center and into the cool night air. Other colonists were emerging from their shelters too, all looking up at the sky. There, visible even without telescopes, was a light moving across the sky, far too large and bright to be a star or moon. "My God," whispered Mary, who had joined them. "It's really happening." Jack felt a strange mix of hope and fear. For 15 years, they had believed no one would come for them. Now something had arrived, but what? The light grew brighter, and soon they could see it wasn't just one light, but many. A massive ship with countless illuminated sections moving through the darkness. It passed over the colony once, bathing them in a strange blue glow for several seconds, then continued to the horizon. "It's circling the planet," Jack said, "making a full survey before deciding what to do with us. Or to us," Ben added quietly. As dawn approached, the colonists gathered in the meeting hall. Few had slept. Mark stood before them, trying to project a confidence he clearly didn't feel. "We don't know who they are or what they want," he told the assembled people, "but we've survived 15 years against all odds. We'll face this together, too." A young man named Tom raised his hand. "What if they're hostile? What can we do against a ship that size?" Before Mark could answer, Jack's communicator beeped urgently. He checked it, then looked up at the gathered colonists, his face pale. "They're sending down a shuttle," he announced. "ETA 12 minutes. The colonists looked at each other in silence. 15 years of abandonment had ended. First contact with an unknown species was minutes away. Mark squared his shoulders. "Jack, Emma, Ben, Pete, with me. We'll meet them. Everyone else stays back, ready to scatter to the caves if anything goes wrong." As they walked toward the landing field, once used for supply ships that never came anymore, Jack couldn't help but think of all his unanswered messages. For years he had hoped someone would come. Now someone, something, had, and he wasn't sure if that was a good thing anymore. The shuttle appeared in the sky, larger than any human craft, descending slowly toward them in the light of the rising red sun. Its design was sleek but strange, with angles and proportions that felt somehow wrong to human eyes. "Remember," Mark said quietly to the small welcome party, "we represent all of humanity here. Let's hope they come in peace." The shuttle touched, down, sending up clouds of red dust. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, with a hiss of equalizing pressure, a door slid open, and the visitors stepped out into the light of Frontier's new day. The aliens that emerged from the shuttle moved with fluid grace that seemed wrong for their size. They stood nearly 7 feet tall, with broad shoulders and lean bodies covered in what appeared to be armor rather than clothing. Their skin was pale blue-gray where it showed at their necks and faces with no hair visible. Their eyes were large and entirely black, with no whites or visible pupils. Jack counted 6 of them as they descended the ramp. 5 carried what were clearly weapons. Long, curved devices held ready but not pointed directly at the humans. The 6th, who walked ahead of the others, was dressed differently, with more elaborate markings on the armor. Mark stepped forward, hands open at his sides to show he carried no weapons. "Welcome to Frontier. We are a human colony. I am Marky Wilson, the leader here." For a long moment there was silence. The lead alien tilted its head slightly as if studying Mark. Then it spoke, in perfect, unaccented English. "We are the Vorax. I am Commander Drell. We received your distress signals." Jack felt his heart leap. They had heard him. All those years of sending messages hadn't been wasted after all. "You understood our communications?" he asked, stepping forward. The alien, Drell, turned those black eyes toward him. "We have studied humans for some time. Your language is simple." There was something in the way Drell said this that made Jack uneasy, a slight emphasis that seemed dismissive. "We're grateful for your response," Mark said carefully. "Our colony has been without contact from Earth for 15 years. "Yes," Drell said. "We are aware of your situation. The war with the Centauri Alliance destroyed much of Earth's space fleet. They have been unable to send rescue." The alien made a gesture that might have been meant as sympathetic. "We can provide assistance." Emma stepped forward. "You know about the war? Is it over? What happened to Earth?" Drell's expression didn't change. Jack wasn't even sure if their faces could show emotion as humans understood it. But there was a pause before the alien answered. "The war ended 5 years ago. Earth survives, though damaged. They are rebuilding slowly." Drell gestured toward the colony buildings. "We would see your settlement. We have supplies that may be of use to you." Mark nodded, though Jack noticed his shoulders remained tense. "Of course. We'd be grateful for any help you can offer." As they walked back toward the colony center, Jack fell in beside Emma. "They speak our language perfectly," he whispered. "Doesn't that seem strange to you?" Emma nodded slightly. "And they know about Earth, the war. How long have they been watching us?" The colonists had gathered in the main square, staring with a mixture of awe and fear as the aliens walked among them. The Vorax moved with precision, their eyes constantly scanning, taking in every detail. "These structures are inefficient for this environment," Drell commented, looking at the colony buildings. "Your technology is primitive." "We've made do with what we have," Pete said, a defensive edge to his voice. "Not easy with no supplies for 15 years. "Indeed," Drell said. "Your survival shows adaptability. This is valuable." Jack didn't like the way the alien said valuable, as if assessing goods rather than people. The other Vorax had spread out, examining buildings, equipment, even the soil and plants. One approached the small group of children who had been kept back from the initial greeting. The young ones stared up at the towering alien with wide eyes. "Your offspring are small," the Vorax stated, reaching out as if to touch young Tom's head. Ben stepped between them quickly. "They're not used to visitors," he said, his hand resting casually near his holstered pistol. The Vorax withdrew its hand and stepped back, but Jack didn't miss the look it exchanged with Drell. "We would examine your medical facilities," Drell announced. "Our ship carries supplies that may help your sick." "We don't have much of a medical facility," Emma said, "but I can show you what we have." She led Drell and one other Vorax toward the converted storage building that now served as the colony's clinic. Mark gestured for Jack to go with them while he continued showing the others around the settlement. Inside the clinic, Emma showed the aliens their limited medical equipment, most of it old and repaired multiple times. Drell seemed particularly interested in the medical records Emma kept. "You have tracked genetic changes in your population?" the alien asked, looking at Emma's notes. "Yes," Emma said, hesitating slightly. "We've had to adapt to the higher radiation levels here. Some colonists developed health problems, but others seemed to gain resistance." "Fascinating," Drell said, the black eyes revealing nothing. "We would like to conduct our own examinations. For your health." "That's not necessary," Emma said quickly. "I maintain regular checks on everyone." "Your equipment is inadequate," Drell stated. "We can detect issues you cannot." Jack stepped forward. "Maybe later, we should rejoin the others." As they left the clinic, Jack noticed one of the Voraks discreetly taking samples of the medicine bottles Emma had shown them. He caught Emma's eye, and her slight nod confirmed she'd seen it too. By midday, the Voraks had explored most of the colony. The colonists had moved from fear to cautious hope, especially after 2 more shuttles arrived carrying containers of supplies, food, medicine, and parts that might help repair some of their failing equipment. "These are gifts," Drell announced to the gathered colonists, "to show our good intentions." But as the day progressed, Jack noticed more and more things that bothered him. The Voraks asked detailed questions about the colonists' biology, their adaptations to frontier, their reproductive rates. They scanned everything with devices the humans didn't understand. And they seemed far more interested in the people than in helping the colony itself. That evening, while the colonists prepared a feast to welcome their visitors, Jack slipped away to the communications center. Something was nagging at him, and he wanted to check the signal records again. He was reviewing the data when Mary found him. "Jack, you should join the others," she said. "The Voraks are going to tell us about Earth and how they can help us." "In a minute," Jack said, not looking up from his console. "There's something strange about their signals. When they first arrived, they broadcast on frequencies that match our standard emergency bands perfectly. But how would they know those frequencies if they weren't specifically looking for human settlements?" Mary frowned. "Maybe they picked up our distress signals like they said." "Maybe," Jack said, unconvinced. "But there's something else. When their main ship scanned us, it didn't just scan our colony. It specifically focused on our genetic patterns. Why would rescuers care about our DNA?" Before Mary could answer, the door opened and one of the Voraks stood there, its tall frame filling the doorway. "You are required at the gathering," it stated. "Commander Drell has an announcement." Jack saved his work quickly and followed the alien back to the colony center, where the colonists had gathered around tables laden with the best food they could offer their visitors. Drell stood at the head table beside Mark, waiting until silence fell before speaking. "People of Frontier," the alien commander began, "we have assessed your situation. This colony is not sustainable. Your equipment fails. Your crops struggle. Your population is too small for genetic diversity." The colonists looked at each other nervously. "Therefore," Drell continued, "we offer you transport to a better world. All of you will board our vessel tomorrow. We will take you to a planet more suited to human life." "Leave Frontier?" Mark asked, clearly surprised. "This is our home." "It is a dying colony," Drell said flatly. "You will not survive another 5 years here." Jack spoke up, unable to contain his suspicion any longer. "Where exactly would you take us?" Drell's black eyes fixed on him. "To a settlement where other humans already live. Those we have rescued before." "Other human colonies?" Emma asked. "You found others like us?" "Many," Drell confirmed. "All now safe under Vorak's protection." Jack felt a chill run through him at those words. "Protection? Or something else?" "We need time to discuss this," Mark said carefully. "It's a big decision." "There is nothing to discuss," Drell stated. "We will begin transport tomorrow. For your own safety, all humans will undergo medical examination aboard our vessel first." Commander's orders. As the colonists began to murmur among themselves, some excited, others worried, Jack caught Ben's eye across the room. The security chief gave a nearly imperceptible nod. Something was very wrong here, and they needed to find out what before tomorrow came. Night fell over the colony, but few slept. While most colonists packed their few belongings, preparing for what many hoped would be salvation, Jack met with Ben, Emma, and Pete in the deepest part of the mining tunnels. These tunnels had been the colony's original purpose, dug to extract valuable minerals. Now they might serve as their salvation. "They're not here to help us," Jack said, keeping his voice low despite being half a mile underground. "I checked our old star charts against the signals they've been sending. The Vorak ship has been transmitting to a location that isn't on any of our maps. I found something too," Emma said, pulling out her medical tablet. "When they were examining our clinic, I noticed them taking samples of our blood stores. Later, I checked their medical supplies, The containers have human writing on them, but not from our colony. The implications hung heavy in the stale tunnel air. Other colonies, Ben whispered. They said they've rescued others. I think I know why they're interested in us specifically, Emma continued. My medical records show something unusual about our colonists. The high radiation levels on Frontier should have killed us years ago, but instead, about half our population has developed resistance. Our DNA has adapted. And the Vorax are very interested in DNA, Jack added. Pete, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. While showing them around the engineering section, I saw one of them scanning our mining equipment. When I asked what they were doing, they said they were checking if it was safe. But the device was focused on the power cells, like they were checking what could be used as weapons. Ben nodded grimly. They've posted guards at each shuttle. They say it's for our protection, but no one can approach them. And I overheard 2 Vorax talking when they thought no one was near. They mentioned processing starting within 2 days. Jack felt sick. Processing, not rescuing. What do we do? Emma asked. Most of the colony is ready to board their ships tomorrow. They believe the Vorax story. We need proof, Jack said. Something concrete to show the others. I might know how to get it, Pete said, pulling out a small device. I modified one of our mining scanners to intercept their communications. It's primitive compared to their tech, but it might work if we get close enough to their shuttle. Ben checked his old pistol, one of only 3 weapons in the entire colony. I'll create a distraction. Pete, you and Jack try to get readings. Emma, you need to warn the people you trust quietly. Tell them to be ready to hide in the tunnels if needed. As they prepared to leave their hiding place, Jack grabbed Ben's arm. What about Mark? He's our leader. We need him. Ben's face darkened. Mark was taken to the Vorax ship an hour ago. Commander Drell said they wanted to discuss the colony's needs in private. Dawn brought chaos to the colony. The Vorax had moved up their timeline, announcing that boarding would begin immediately. Colonists were being organized into groups, each assigned to a different shuttle. Jack and Pete positioned themselves near the communications center, which gave them a view of the main landing area. Emma moved quietly among the colonists, whispering warnings to those she trusted most. Ben approached the Vorax guard at the nearest shuttle, asking loud questions about the journey ahead, creating the distraction they needed. Pete activated his modified scanner, pointing it toward the nearest Vorax communication device. For several tense minutes, nothing happened. Then the scanner beeped softly. I've got something, Pete whispered. It's encrypted, but wait. His eyes widened as he adjusted settings. This part isn't encrypted, it's... Oh no. What? Jack demanded. It's a manifest. They're categorizing colonists by age, health, and genetic markers. Pete's voice shook, and there's a section labeled Extraction Schedule. Jack felt cold despite the morning heat. Can you access any visual data? Anything from their ship? Pete worked the controls frantically. Maybe. Their systems are way beyond ours, but they might not expect us to even try. The small screen flickered, showing grainy images. At first, Jack couldn't make sense of what he was seeing. Then clarity struck like a physical blow. The images showed what could only be described as a laboratory. And in that laboratory were containers, dozens of them, each holding what appeared to be a human suspended in liquid. They're not rescuing colonies, Jack whispered. They're harvesting them. A shadow fell across them. Jack looked up to see a Vorax soldier standing over them, weapon raised. This activity is unauthorized, the alien stated flatly. Before either man could react, a shot rang out. The Vorax staggered, blue fluid seeping from its shoulder where Ben's bullet had struck. It didn't fall but turned toward the new threat. Run! Ben shouted, firing again. Chaos erupted. Colonists scattered as more Vorax appeared, weapons drawn. Jack grabbed the scanner and raced toward the mines, Pete close behind. Others followed, understanding that something had gone terribly wrong. Emma appeared from between buildings, leading a group of colonists, including several children. This way, she called, pointing toward the mine entrance. We've prepared supplies inside. Not everyone ran. Some colonists, either not believing the danger or too frightened to move, remained where they were. The Vorax quickly surrounded them. Jack paused at the mine entrance, looking back at the colony center where people were being herded onto shuttles. He wanted to help them, but what could he do against the Vorax weapons? "Jack, come on," Pete called from inside the mine. With a last look at the colonists being taken, Jack ducked into the mine tunnel. 24 colonists had made it to safety, less than half their total population. The rest were already in Vorax hands. Deep in the mining tunnels, the escaped colonists gathered in a large cavern that had once been a break room for the miners. Emergency lights cast a dim glow over scared faces. "What do we do now?" young Tom asked, his voice echoing slightly in the rocky chamber. "We fight back," Ben said grimly, checking his pistol. He had only 4 bullets left. Somehow, Jack connected Pete's scanner to their old mining computers. "First, we need to know what we're dealing with. Pete, can you clean up these images?" As Pete worked, Emma organized their supplies. They had food and water for perhaps 3 days, basic medical equipment and mining tools that could double as weapons in desperate hands. "I've got it," Pete announced after 20 minutes of work. "The signal is clearer now." Everyone gathered around the small screen. The images from the Vorax ship were now much clearer and more horrifying. The laboratory was actually a vast chamber filled with hundreds of containers, each holding what appeared to be a sedated human. "Are they dead?" Mary asked, her voice barely a whisper. "No," Emma said, studying the images. "They appear to be in some kind of suspended animation. See the monitoring equipment? They're keeping them alive." "But why?" someone else asked. Jack adjusted the scanner, bringing up the partial Vorax communication he'd intercepted. According to this, they're extracting something from them, something in human DNA, specifically adaptive mutations. "Like our radiation resistance," Emma added. "They're farming humans for genetic material." The revelation left everyone silent for a long moment. "There's something else," Pete said, pointing to a different section of the communication. "Look at these coordinates. They've visited at least 7 other human colonies before us, and we've never heard from any of them," Jack said quietly. "What about Mark?" Mary asked. "He was taken to their ship earlier." As if in answer, the mining communication system, old and rarely used, crackled to life. "Jack? Anyone? This is Mark." The voice was weak and filled with static. "If you can hear me, stay hidden. They're not what they seem. They keep humans in containers for experiments. They've done this before. Many times." "Mark." Jack grabbed the communicator. "Where are you? Can you escape?" "No time," Mark's voice replied, weaker now. "They're coming. Listen, they're afraid of the mining lasers. The frequency disrupts their tech. Use the lasers." The communication cut off abruptly. "Mark? Mark," Jack called, but there was only silence. Ben placed a hand on Jack's shoulder. "He's given us a weapon. The mining lasers." Pete's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "Of course. The lasers operate on a unique frequency to cut specific minerals. If that frequency disrupts Vorax technology, then we have a chance to fight back," Jack finished. He looked around at the frightened but determined faces of his fellow colonists. "We need a plan. We can't leave our people on that ship to be processed." "The lasers are heavy equipment," Pete warned. "They're not exactly portable weapons." "Then we bring the fight to where the lasers are," Ben said. "We lure them into the mining operations center." As they began to form a plan, Jack felt something he hadn't experienced in 15 years of sending unanswered messages into space. Purpose. For years they had waited for rescue. Now they would have to rescue themselves and the rest of humanity from the predators that had found them. The mining operations center sat abandoned, its massive equipment covered in dust. Jack remembered when these machines ran day and night, cutting through rock to extract the valuable minerals that had brought humans to Frontier in the first place. Now those same machines might save what remained of humanity. "The main laser array is still operational," Pete said, checking the systems. We have enough power in the backup generators for maybe 3 or 4 hours of use. Will that be enough? Jack asked. It has to be, Ben replied grimly. He had distributed the mining tools among the colonists, pickaxes, drills, and heavy wrenches that could serve as weapons. Not much against Vorax technology, but perhaps enough when combined with the element of surprise. Emma had sorted her medical supplies, preparing for injuries. The mining lasers might disrupt their tech, she said, but we still need a way to get our people off their ship. Jack nodded. That's where I come in. He had spent the night working on the colony's old communication system. If Mark could contact us from their ship, maybe I can send a signal back, something the captured colonists might receive. Young Tom, who had proven surprisingly resourceful, spoke up. But how do we get the Vorax to come here? They're busy, loading people onto their shuttles. We give them something they want more than random colonists, Ben said. According to Emma's records, some of us have more advanced radiation resistance than others. Emma nodded slowly. Yes, and based on the Vorax scans, they can detect the difference. So we use ourselves as bait, Jack concluded, the most genetically valuable of us. The plan took shape quickly. Emma identified the 5 colonists with the most pronounced radiation resistance, herself, Jack, Ben, and 2 others. They would position themselves near the colony's edge, making it appear they were preparing to flee into the wilderness rather than surrender. The Vorax will detect your genetic markers, Pete explained. They'll want to capture you intact. Once they pursue us, we lead them into the mining center, Ben continued. Pete will be ready with the lasers. The rest of you will be hidden throughout the facility. And if this doesn't work? Mary asked, the fear evident in her voice. Jack met her eyes. Then at least we tried. Better than being harvested in those containers. As dawn approached, they put their plan into motion. Jack sent a carefully coded message on all frequencies, hoping some of their people aboard the Vorax ship would understand. Equipment maintenance at 0800, full power required. Emergency override. Wilson, Mark. It was a reference to the mining center's emergency protocols, named after Mark as the mining supervisor. Any colonist would recognize it as a call to the mining facility. Then Jack, Emma, Ben, and the 2 other bait colonists made their way to the edge of the colony, carrying packs and supplies as if preparing to escape into Frontier's harsh wilderness. They didn't have to wait long. A Vorax shuttle appeared overhead, hovering menacingly. Commander Drell's voice boomed from speakers. Humans, your resistance is illogical. We offer survival. The wilderness offers only death. We've seen what your survival means, Jack shouted back. We'll take our chances out there. The shuttle landed and 8 Vorax soldiers emerged, weapons ready. Jack noted they moved cautiously, scanning the surroundings. Good. They were wary. That meant they saw the humans as a threat, however small. Surrender, ordered the lead soldier. Commander Drell requires your genetic material intact. Come and get it, Ben replied, then turned and ran toward the mining center. The others followed, making sure to stay just within range of the pursuing Vorax. The aliens were faster but seemed reluctant to use their weapons, confirming they wanted captures, not kills. Jack's lungs burned as they raced through the abandoned parts of the colony and into the mining complex. The facility was a maze of corridors and chambers cut directly into the rock. The pursuing Vorax would have to follow them deep inside. As they passed a junction, Jack nodded to Mary, hidden in a side passage. She pressed a button, and behind them, heavy doors slammed shut, cutting off the Vorax soldiers' retreat. Split up, Ben shouted. Make them divide their forces. Jack ran down one corridor, Emma down another. The Vorax soldiers hesitated, then split into smaller groups to pursue them. Jack led 3 soldiers deeper into the facility, toward the main chamber where the largest mining laser was located. He could hear the aliens behind him, their footsteps eerily quiet for creatures their size. He burst into the main chamber and dove behind a large piece of equipment. The Vorax soldiers followed, weapons raised. Now! Jack shouted. Pete, hidden in the control room above, activated the mining laser. A beam of intense energy shot across the chamber, not aimed at the Vorax soldiers directly, but at their communication devices. The effect was immediate. The aliens staggered, their weapons sparking and failing. From hiding places throughout the chamber, colonists emerged with mining tools raised. The battle was brief, but brutal. Without their advanced weapons, the Vorax were still dangerous, stronger than humans and with natural armor-like skin. But the colonists fought with the desperation of those who knew their very existence as a species was at stake. When it was over, all 3 Vorax soldiers lay unconscious or dead. Jack didn't have time to check which. He was already racing to help the others. Throughout the mining facility, similar scenes played out. The Vorax, accustomed to technological superiority, found themselves ambushed by desperate humans with primitive but effective weapons. Jack found Emma in a side chamber, a cut on her forehead but otherwise unhurt. 2 Vorax soldiers lay motionless on the ground. "Ben?" he asked. "Last I saw, he was leading his group toward the eastern section," she replied, pressing a cloth to her wound. Before they could look for him, the facility's old communication system crackled to life. "Jack? Anyone? This is Tom. Something's happening. The Vorax ships, they're powering up weapons." Jack and Emma raced to the nearest window. From there, they could see the massive Vorax ship in orbit, now glowing with energy along its hull. "They're going to attack from orbit," Jack realized. "They must have decided we're too much trouble to harvest. After all this, they'll just kill us all?" Emma's voice shook with anger. Pete's voice came over the communication system. "Not if I can help it. I've got control of the main communication array. If the mining lasers disrupt their tech at close range, then maybe a focused beam from our satellite dish might disrupt their ship," Jack finished, understanding immediately. "It's worth a try," Pete replied. "But I need more power, everything we've got." "Do it," Jack ordered. "Shut down everything except life support and direct all power to the communication array." As they gathered in the control room, Ben limped in, one arm clearly broken but a grim smile on his face. "We got them all," he reported, "at least the ones inside the facility." "There'll be more," Jack said, "and their ship is preparing to attack from orbit." Through the windows they could see the remaining Vorax soldiers retreating to their shuttles, clearly having received new orders. "The array is charged," Pete announced, aiming at their main ship now. On screens throughout the control room, they watched as the colony's old communication dish, once used to send messages to Earth, tilted up toward the sky. It began to glow as power surged through it. "Fire," Jack said quietly. A beam of energy, visible even in daylight, shot upward from the dish. For several seconds, nothing seemed to happen. Then the Vorax ship in orbit flickered, its lights dimming momentarily. "It's working!" Pete shouted. "Their shields are fluctuating." Jack grabbed the colony's emergency transmitter. If there was ever a time to send a distress call, it was now. "This is Colony Frontier to any human ships," he broadcast. "We are under attack by hostile aliens called the Vorax. They harvest humans for genetic material. Multiple colonies already taken. Please respond." He had no expectation of a reply. For 15 years, no one had answered their calls. But perhaps if they somehow survived this, someone might eventually hear their warning. The Vorax ship's lights came back on, steadier now. It had adapted to their attack. "They're charging weapons again," Pete reported, his voice flat. Jack looked around at the faces of his fellow colonists, tired, scared, but determined. "We gave it our best," he said. "At least we die free." Emma took his hand. "At least we die fighting." As they waited for the end, the communication system suddenly erupted with static. "Copy, Frontier Colony. This is Warship Defiant of the Archon Fleet. We have detected Vorax activity in your sector. Stand by for assistance." Jack stared at the communication console in shock. Another alien voice, but this one responding to their call for help. On the screens, they watched as a new ship appeared at the edge of their sensor range, sleeker than the Vorax vessel but equally large. It moved with incredible speed, heading directly toward the Vorax ship. "Who are the Archon?" Ben asked, voicing what they all wondered. "I don't know," Jack replied, "but right now, they're the only hope we've got." As they watched, the new ship opened fire on the Vorax vessel. The battle had begun, but would these newcomers be saviors, or simply new predators coming to claim what the Vorax had found? Space above Frontier lit up with energy weapons as the two alien ships engaged in battle. From the control room of the mining facility, the colonists watched in stunned silence. After 15 years of isolation, followed by the horror of the Vorax arrival, the appearance of yet another alien race seemed almost too much to process. "The new ship is outmaneuvering the Vorax," Ben observed, watching the tactical display Pete had managed to connect to their old sensors. "But why would they help us?" Emma wondered aloud. "They don't know us." "Maybe they're not helping us," Jack replied grimly. "Maybe they just hate the Vorax." The communication system crackled again. "Frontier Colony, this is Captain Lorne of the Archon Fleet. We are engaging the Vorax vessel. Be advised, Vorax ground forces may attempt to return to their ship or may target your colony directly. Prepare for possible ground assault." Jack grabbed the communicator. "Captain Lorne, this is Jack Adams of Colony Frontier. We have already neutralized several Vorax soldiers, but more remain near their shuttles. Many of our people are being held aboard the Vorax ship. Can you help them?" There was a pause before the reply came. "We are aware of Vorax harvesting practices. Our primary objective is to disable their vessel and prevent escape. Once secured, we will attempt rescue operations." As if to emphasize the captain's warning, alarms began to sound throughout the mining facility. "Vorax shuttles are on the move," Pete reported. 3 heading back to their main ship, but 2 are coming this way. Fast. "They're not retreating," Ben said. "They want to finish what they started, or at least take us with them." Jack made a quick decision. "Pete, Emma, stay here and coordinate with the Archon. Ben, gather everyone who can fight. We need to get to the surface and prepare for their attack." "With what?" Ben asked, gesturing to their mining tools and the few Vorax weapons they had captured. "If they come in force, then we'll die fighting," Jack said firmly. "But I'm not giving up when we're this close. 15 years we've survived here, we're not stopping now." As Jack and Ben led a group of 20 colonists to the surface, they could see the space battle raging overhead. The Archon ship moved with remarkable agility for its size, hammering the larger Vorax vessel with precise strikes. But the Vorax ship was heavily armored and returning fire with devastating weapons of its own. On the ground, the situation was equally desperate. 2 Vorax shuttles had landed in the colony center. From each, at least a dozen soldiers emerged, led by a familiar figure, Commander Drell. "They sent their commander," Ben said as they watched from the cover of a storage building. "They're serious about finishing this." Jack studied the Vorax forces. They moved with military precision, securing the area. But something was different. About their behavior now, they seemed more aggressive, less concerned with capturing colonists alive. "They're not here to harvest anymore," Jack realized. "They're here for revenge." Through his portable communicator, Emma's voice came through. "Jack, the Archon say they've damaged the Vorax ship's engines. It can't escape, but it's still fighting. And they say Mark is alive. They've detected human life signs in a secure section of the Vorax vessel." Hope surged through Jack. If Mark was alive, maybe others were too. "Tell the Archon we need help on the ground," Jack replied. "Fast." Before Emma could respond, Drell's voice boomed through the colony's speaker system, the same one Jack had used for years to announce community meetings and celebrations. "Humans of Frontier," the Vorax commander said, his perfect English now carrying an edge of anger. "Your interference has caused significant damage. The Archon are ancient enemies of the Vorax. By allying with them, you have chosen your fate. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and we will ensure your suffering is legendary." "Friendly guy," Ben muttered. Jack looked at the determined faces around him. Colonists who had survived 15 years of hardship only to face extinction at the hands of alien harvesters. He knew what they had to do. "Pete," he said into his communicator, "can you get the mining lasers working on the surface?" "The portable ones, yes," Pete replied. "But they have limited range and power." "Bring them up," Jack ordered. "And Emma, do you still have access to the Vorax communication frequency?" "Yes, but they've encrypted most of it now." "Don't need to understand it," Jack said. "Just need to disrupt it. Broadcast random noise on their frequency. Let's see how they like fighting without being able to coordinate." As the colonists prepared their defense, the Vorax forces began to advance methodically through the colony. They destroyed buildings as they went, clearly no longer concerned with preserving potential resources. "Get ready," Ben told the colonists who had armed themselves with mining tools and the few weapons they had. "Remember, aim for their communication devices first." The first clash came at the edge of the colony, center. The Vorax, moving in tight formation, rounded a corner to find 3 colonists apparently fleeing. The aliens raised their weapons, only to be hit from both sides by colonists hiding in buildings. It should have been a one-sided massacre. The Vorax had superior strength, armor, and weapons. But the colonists had 2 advantages: Emma's signal, jamming, which made the Vorax communications sputter and fail, and their intimate knowledge of the colony's layout. Still, the battle was brutal. For every Vorax soldier they managed to bring down, a colonist was injured or killed. Jack found himself fighting alongside Tom, the young colonist who had grown up knowing only life on frontier. "Behind you," Tom shouted, swinging a mining pick at a Vorax soldier who had appeared from between buildings. The pick glanced off the alien's armor, but the distraction gave Jack enough time to fire a captured Vorax weapon. The alien went down, blue fluid, seeping from its wound. Across the colony, similar battles raged. The colonists fought with the desperate strength of those defending their home and very existence, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Jack knew they couldn't win, not without help. As if in answer to his unspoken thought, a new sound filled the air, the roar of engines unlike either human or Vorax design. A sleek craft descended from the clouds hovering over the colony center. "Frontier colonists, take cover," came Captain Lorne's voice. "We are deploying ground forces." The Archon shuttle's doors opened and figures leaped out. Humanoid, but clearly not human, with silvery skin and movements too quick for human reflexes. They engaged the Vorax soldiers with weapons that seemed designed specifically to penetrate Vorax armor. In the midst of the chaos, Jack spotted Commander Drell moving toward the colony's communication center, the building that housed their connection to the satellites and, potentially, a way to signal the Vorax ship. "He's going for the transmitter," Jack shouted to Ben, who was nearby. "We can't let him call for reinforcements." Together, they raced toward the communications building, dodging fighting pairs of Archon and Vorax soldiers. They reached the building just as Drell was attempting to interface with the human equipment. "Stop," Jack shouted, aiming his captured weapon. Drell turned, his black eyes showing no emotion. "Human, your species is an evolutionary accident. Your genetic materials are useful to us, nothing more. You are not meant to fight species like mine." "We're doing pretty well so far," Ben growled. Drell moved with shocking speed, knocking the weapon from Jack's hands and grabbing him by the throat. "Your defiance is interesting but futile. We have harvested humans for generations. You are not. The first colony to resist. All others failed." Jack struggled to breathe as the alien's grip tightened. Through darkening vision, he saw Ben attempt to attack Drell from behind, only to be swatted away with casual strength. Then a new figure appeared, in the doorway, silver-skinned and tall, but with a grace that the Vorax lacked. "Release the human, Drell," the Archon soldier said. "Your ship is disabled. Your forces are defeated. The harvesting ends today." Drell's grip loosened slightly as he turned to face the new threat. "Archon, always interfering in matters beyond. Your concern." "The freedom of sentient species is our concern," the Archon replied, raising a weapon unlike any Jack had seen. "As it has been since your kind began this abomination." With his last strength, Jack drove his elbow into a point on Drell's armor where earlier fighting had created a small gap. The Vorax commander grunted in pain, his grip loosening enough for Jack to break free and roll away. The Archon didn't hesitate, firing a weapon that sent Drell crashing against the far wall where he slumped, motionless. "Are you injured?" the Archon asked Jack, extending a hand to help him up. "I'll live," Jack managed, his throat burning. "But my people, the ones on the Vorax ship, are being rescued as we speak," the Archon assured him. Captain Lorne prioritized the detention areas once the ship was secured. Dawn broke the next day over a changed colony frontier. The Vorax ship hung motionless in orbit, now under Archon control. On the ground, medical teams, both human and Archon, treated the injured. Of the 46 colonists, 39 had survived, including all those who had been taken to the Vorax ship. Mark, weakened but alive, sat with Jack, Emma, Ben, and Pete as Captain Lorne explained what had happened. "The Vorax are harvesters," the Archon captain said. His standard English was perfect, though his accent was like none they had heard before. "They search for species with useful genetic traits and harvest them systematically. We have fought them for centuries." "Why did you come here?" Emma asked. "How did you know?" "We detected their ship entering this system," Lorne explained. "We have been tracking their harvesting vessels for many years, but your distress call helped us pinpoint their exact location. After 15 years of sending messages, someone finally heard us," Jack said quietly. Captain Lorne looked at him with what seemed like respect. "Your colony's survival is remarkable. Few stand against the Vorax and live to tell of it." "What happens now?" Mark asked, his voice still weak from his ordeal. "We offer you a choice," Lorne replied. "The Archon Federation includes many species, including some humans from colonies we have rescued before. You would be welcome among us, or if you prefer, we can help you re-establish contact with Earth." Jack looked around at the colony, damaged but standing. For 15 years they had thought no one would come. They had waited for rescue, only to find themselves fighting for survival against one alien race and being saved by another. "I think," he said slowly, "we have a lot to discuss. But whatever we decide, Colony Frontier has proven one thing. Humanity belongs among the stars, standing on our own feet and alongside new allies." As the red sun rose over Frontier, Jack thought about the message he would send today. Not a plea for rescue, but a declaration. Humanity had faced its first interstellar threat and with help had survived. The universe was wider and more dangerous than they had imagined, but also filled with potential allies. They were no longer alone, in the darkness, and they were no longer afraid.